Alright, we are moving on to game 3 now, so let's jump right into it.
On assault, anything is possible. Let's see what MindFreak can do. They're going to be starting off here on defense. The DropBears.
Very standard. Goats v Goats mirror.
Standard stuff on both sides. Goats compositions. Tita again onto that Reinhardt. Davey.
So something that you have to consider always here is basically the team that's attacking that doesn't have information, the better team will always scout to understand what play they need to go for. So there's a lot of different defensive setups that you can have, and if you're smart and if you're on the attacking team and you end up getting to scout, so your Zarya either walks up and gets energy or your Ryan walks up and he doesn't get punished, then you end up having a lot of these fights where your team can like take the very smart individual fight where they can be like, all right, I know where these two people are, we're going to have these two people go on to them, or there's going to be like assignments that people can have, basically understanding what you want to do to win, have a good win condition for the fight, because this map has a lot of different setups that teams can have, and so there's a lot of different positions. So for example, if the Rhine is standing over here and they're looking for a play where it's pincer, so there's like members standing over here looking to crossfire. If the Rhine that walks in on offense is walking here and he's holding a shield to block damage from here, there's a chance that there's other members standing over here, they're going to shoot him in the back. So it's very simple like that, but if you're on attack and you get to actually walk out here and basically scout where they are, you can set up an attack. So it's basically like, we understand we're going to push these members back right here, but then the members that are holding close here, we can engage on them. So there's just different things that you can do, but the teams that are really smart that you want to pay attention to are the teams on attack that are going for this aggressive play after they scout. But let's move back a little bit and observe what they do. So we can see Tita kind of goes in for some information, but he can see that they're holding close, but it is somewhat risky as the fact that a lot of Lucios are going to end up playing in this position and this position here especially. And when you're playing here as Lucio and you're playing to boop the Rhine, you're in a very non-committal spot where you're not going to be doing a lot, not going to be pressured very much, but you have the chance to boop the enemy Rhine into your team, and then he has to potentially just hold shield for the rest of the fight, and then your Reinhardt can walk up with shield, with full shield, with the Zarya shield, and potentially swing on multiple members here in the choke. So it's very disadvantageous to have your Rhine walk up without bubble and get booped forward, or just walk up in general without knowing exactly what you want to do. So you can see how far the Rhine could potentially get displaced, and he can be over here, and he is forced in this situation to potentially hold shield while there's potentially members behind him shooting him in the back, while he has to continue to hold shield, and the rest of the members of DropBears have to walk forward and really protect him. And you can see a situation here. Tita ends up holding shield for the majority of the fight just because of how much he gets CC'd and how much he gets pressured. And the rest of the members on MindFreak, sure, they take a bit of damage, but they end up now having the Reinhardt advantage. So it's very easy for them to clean up and win this fight.
Not sure, I didn't quite catch it, but I wanted to say Davey has looked pretty good so far on that Reinhardt.
So Swoko did a really good job there, and then I'd say Slidzor, it was either Slidzor or Christopher did a good job of also following up on the boop. Because there was 2 boops that put Tita so far in.
Now available here for Goobs. MindFreak doing a reasonable job of starting to get these ultimates up, and this is precisely what they need to do if they're going to try and make a decent time here on defense. Potentially they can hold this out as long.
Unfortunately, MindFreak were feeding Huss a lot of ult charge. They weren't being very smart about where they were standing. You can see Huss is walking up, and he's getting a lot of right clicks onto some MindFreak members that are standing like right at the door, and so they're eating right clicks and they're feeding grab very, very quickly. And Huss will go for these aggressive grabs where the rest of the members aren't even showing, and he will grab, and the rest of the members will speed in and look to punish. Very small thing to notice is basically Bert will do this setup sometimes where he will gain some momentum, so he'll be playing on this wall behind here. You won't be able to see him, but you'll be able to hear him, and then he'll look to slide off this wall and jump and look to use the speed momentum off this wall to get behind, and a lot of times try to knock the Rhine in or other members that are holding close to the door. You can see him carry that momentum, and then he tries to boop the members in.
Shatter comes through, followed up with a Graviton Surge and Self-Destruct looking for kills.
This is going to be big for MindFreak, cleaning things up quite nicely. What Syndey DropBears there was trying to do is they were really trying to force the issue. You could see throwing out that grab, but they weren't really all in position. But admittedly, there was obviously the Transcendence for MindFreak to defend against.
So I think investment-wise, this is probably fine. Both Briggs used their ult basically as soon as the Ryans were starting to walk in, so they got a lot of the armor during the fight. And then we could see there was a trade of trances, there was a trade of gravs. They used D.Va though. They used D.Va and they used Rhine Shatter earlier on. So DropBears are going to have priority in the fact that they'll probably have Beat and Shatter available, and then a D.Va Bomb coming a little bit later. And then MindFreak really will just have Beat, and then Brig ult will potentially come a little bit later. So DropBears definitely have the aggressive advantage right now, where if Bertlog is able to walk in and actually boop someone back, and then potentially boop the Rhine in, and then basically nullify his shield, Titawat can get a good shatter off.
Against it anyway, and then a Kraken himself throws down his Transcendence. In a situation like that, really,
Or you can potentially push enough members back that they will be in a bad enough position that Shoyu could get a good bomb off.
there's nothing that Syndey DropBears can do to defend against it.
No counter, nothing to deal with. Shatter this time aggressive.
Yeah, Davey was going for the aggressive.
They followed this up with a little bit more damage.
Let's see, who scouted that?
Using that Transcendence.
Was it Titawat himself?
Straight after that Transcendence.
Yeah, he did a good job of scouting. He was the person in front. He did a good job of scouting it himself. As soon as you see this, you basically follow the Rhine in. He's like a door guide, basically. It's like, here, give him the space. Because when your Shatter's up and the enemy Rhine is now pinned out of the way, he could not hold shield for all the members. So then you see him walking in as far as he can to basically avoid the Rhine and then look for a Shatter himself on the members who've been holding over here basically the whole time. The D.Va and the Brig have both been holding on this side.
No counter, nothing to deal with.
And Slidge...
Shatter this time.
Okay. Ends up being Swoko on the ground, which actually ends up being like a decent problem for them, as when you're playing Lucio on defense, a lot of times you definitely should not be on the ground. You don't want to be Brig stunned, you definitely do not want to be shattered, so...
With a little bit more damage, Addy, Swoko both going down, Slitz or Jay.
Titawat definitely didn't need a swing there at the end. He should have just held shield and tried to live as long as possible,
Doing quite good.
because there's a chance that MindFreak could swing it back.
Now the DropBears starting to find themselves a little bit of room. No longer trying to push through the chokehold. They are aggressive and they are
There was a decent amount of trade kills there, but
There with the
I'd say overall they played it about as well as they could have.
for MindFreak. If he does
'Cause they ended up using the ults that they really needed to. They basically got the free shatter on the two members that were holding a bit too close off of Davy's mistake, and then Bert was able to beat basically to counter the next shatter that came onto them once they were in the choke.
sights on defending point B.
Yes, well, look there. What was that, 2.5 minutes there for the first objective. Now 5.5 available here for the second, sorry. MindFreak, look, they don't have the ultimate economy in their favor, and the DropBears going to push very quickly here onto the point, going to try and make this work for them. Swilko uses that beat drop almost immediately, as you said, holding onto it from before. Self-destruct comes through. Can it find a pick? It does. It's Addy. Addy's going to go down. That is not great at all. Again, doing what he can to save the day.
This ends up being okay for DropBears, but
The DropBears
a lot of times I'm not a huge fan of making this rotation, partially because it's somewhat risky in the fact that it is technically the fastest way you can start to force a fight and really get members to drop off the high ground. But the problem you sometimes have is if your members are all rotating through here, the high ground that you're on is actually super duper thin. So Divas potentially will be playing on this high ground right here. They will swoop down, they will try to boop you. Enemy Briggs will sometimes throw a flail, and if not every single member is behind the Rhine shield, the Rhine's resetting a shield, potentially sometimes here. Lucio's can be playing up on the high ground as well, and they will try to go for a boop. You can potentially throw off your team, well, you'll have members over here and some people in the pit. So this play from the DropBears and from most teams that try to do this offensively have to be very quick, and it does a lot like in the fact that if you have people on the point, the other team is going to be forced to drop, and you're going to be able to force a fight, potentially on your terms, especially if you have more ult charge than the other team, which will create an advantage for your team. But occasionally it is a bit risky, so it is something to think about.
don't have the ultimate economy in their favor,
Especially if you're amp speed boosting and you have a Brig ult out, though, it's very clear that DropBears want to fight right now and win.
DropBears going to push very quickly here onto the point, going to try and make this work for them.
But you can see as they do this rotation, the Zen is now left on the high ground, and a lot of times he ends up being able to free reign for a lot of the fight. So it's about having a fight go very quickly and then being able to win off that. You can also see the slight problem with this. Huss actually probably makes a mistake using the grav here. When you're doing the rotation, so you have to come from the front door and you have to get all the way over here, you're going to use amp basically to clear to this space. The problem is if you are now grabbing on the point and the rest of your team is over here, you do not have the amp speed boost to have the follow-up on this. So a lot of times if you are going for this play, you have to basically stand here, and if you go for the grav on the point, then you are able to follow it up. But if you are back here, if you're trying to back basically to coast and then you're going for the grav, you have to have a cover a lot of space, and it's very hard to have the same follow-up that you would want. So I'd say it's a bit of a mistake here from Huss going for this grav. Ideally, I think you could have waited a little bit of time, basically waited to see the Diva Matrix to go for this, but I think they end up making it work just because the ult economy that they do have. But you can see how members here, they do get somewhat shut down as they're trying to close the gap basically to get onto the grav. But the members here do end up getting Brig stunned, pushed back, and then the grav is finished, and basically nothing has happened to MindFreak members. Shoyu has a really good bomb though. Part of the advantage of throwing any Diva Bomb, like anywhere in like this airspace in the middle of the point, is basically you're going to explode the entire room. So any squishy hero has to take cover behind any of the objects, has to completely get off the point, hide anywhere they can. So Diva Bombs thrown anywhere in this middle airspace a lot of times is going to create a lot of space on the point.
Oh, well, maybe Christoph and that self-destruct is going to be enough as it finds Shoyo and Bertlog. Shoyo, who did just get...
Were Bert and Shoyo able to get into a safe enough position?
Very good position right now. It's just Christoph and this self-destruct up there by the DropBears. They're looking like they're in a very good position right now. It's just Christoph and this...
Oh yeah, Shoyo can't get away. Swoko ends up booping Bert over here.
Oh, well, maybe Christoph and that self-destruct is going to be enough as it finds Shoyo and Bertlog. Shoyo, who did just get taken out of the mech, so he really was not in a great position at all to try and hide away. But to find Bertlog, to find the Lucio, that is quite special from Christoph. And for Syndey DropBears, it does mean they have to sort of
get away with nothing this time around.
And now the going gets a little bit tougher for them. Graviton Surge coming out from MindFreak.
Yeah, Trans is...
I want to see Slizor's ult charge before he swaps. Okay, so basically swaps on no ult at all. Ana on defense is a bit of a niche pick that you can do, and it works in two different scenarios. Basically, well, three I'd say probably, is a scenario where you don't have a lot to counter trance, and you want to have a button that basically counters trance. So if your Ana's on the high ground, and if you see the Matrix go, and if they pop trance, you have a potential to negate it completely. If you are on the high ground and you see the enemy team look to go for a fight on the high ground, you can potentially have Addy looking to grab this wall, this wall, this wall, anywhere really close, and then have all the members swarm, and then basically Ana throws the nade at her feet, and then it's very hard for the Diva to either eat it, and then you can potentially get a lot of splash damage, a lot of AoE, and really win a fight instantly where you'll basically negate any support, healing, and ults. Or, Ana's a bit of a niche pick in the fact that you can have her played in some comps, like I'd say we used to play it sometimes, especially on this point when we could, with Ana Zen basically playing as far back as possible, and then our tanks playing very safe, and then Ana playing like near the spawn door, similar to how old dive meta was played, where Ana and Zen would be a partner team. They'd sit very far back. It would be very hard for Genjis or anyone to dive them because they could basically just walk back into spawn if they need to get healing, or if they need to be invulnerable. But against Goats metas, it really offers a lot of healing, where if your Rhines are standing looking at each other, the Ana can potentially just be healing the Rhine, and then the enemy team maybe potentially only has Zen healing him. So I like this triple support, especially on defense, but it's very niche in the fact that you don't get the same win potential that a Brig stun can potentially create, and where you can armor up and really have a fat team win. But if your Ana is able to get a lot of nades off and she is allowed to play in like a safe enough position, you can carry out longer fights and very much win them through hitting a sleep, hitting a nade, getting a nano on a Rhine who's able to swing a lot. So
Potentially going to capture the point there. They come away with nothing this time around.
And now the going gets a little bit tougher for them. Graviton Surge coming out from...
you basically see what MindFreak does, though, and that's basically what I said they potentially will do. Trance comes out. It's basically all 3 win conditions that I said was get a grav on the wall, have Slidzor walk up, and potentially be inside the entire team. So the entire MindFreak team is basically in this giant ball, and they're looking to all in this grav. If Slidzor just walks in here and just nades the ground, he potentially will nullify a Kraken's ult, stop Bert and Felix's healing, and then potentially just they AoE them down with basically Ryan swinging into them. You can see a couple different members on DropBears were able to get AoE'd, but if you aren't quick enough, the problem, they do get the nade off, so this actually ends up being a very winnable fight where the Trance is up for the DropBears. Felix, Titawad, and Bert all end up getting antied, but you can see there's 4 members of MindFreak that aren't actually committing here, where I think they do need to be committing. Like, if the play is to have the Ana holding up on the high ground, especially when she's in this corner, and the play is to wrap and do anything, they definitely need to be all-inning all together. But I'd say there's a bit of miscommunication, and there's a bit of timidness for too many members on MindFreak, where the members that were holding close, Slidzor and Davey, end up getting picked off because not enough members of MindFreak were holding close enough.
This could be big. This could be the DropBears finding the point.
Yeah, much better transcendence this time from a Kraken. And when that Graviton Surge does come down, and then MindFreak decide to even push into that closed angle. Syndey DropBears, they lock them away from the point.
And it ends up really punishing them. MindFreak can't even get back to the point, so the under-aggression ends up really punishing them, where they had a very winnable fight. And I think Addy had the right idea with the grav, and Davey and Slidzor definitely tried to follow up on it, but the rest of the members were playing too safe and didn't all in into it.
Almost half the map all over again. It practically is if you had 30 seconds for capturing the first point. Davey going to escort his team into the little room, and Goobs, unfortunately, the first one down. That's not the start they needed. Yeah, Goobs just kind of got stuck in that cutout and couldn't get into the room. Maybe pushed in there by Shoyo.
So DropBears had a preference for playing Winston, especially in these scenarios. Especially when they had Chrono, because Chrono had much more favor towards Winston over Reinhardt, and you will see this set up time and time again. Shoyo will play in here. Bert will either be on this wall, and he'll be looking for boops, or he'll be looking to disrupt as much as possible, and then you'll see 3 members standing up here, and you'll either see the monkey standing anywhere in this area looking to cleave, or he'll be jumping up here, he'll be jumping over here. So the setup is very basic from DropBears, and you'll see it time and time again because it works against these teams, especially who try to have Reinhardt clump and try to either rotate any which direction. The Winston will get all the resources, and he'll be able to mass cleave into them. And you can watch, if they spend any amount of time in this choke, Titawad's going to farm so much ult charge. You can see he ends the fight with 67% ult charge, and basically if you're on the attacking team and you let this happen, you're going to get farmed each and every fight by a Winston, and then he's going to get a primal either every other fight or every fight, and then it's going to be very hard for you to win. As DropBears are only going to have to invest Winston ult, like basically every fight, and then use their cooldowns on the Winston to keep him alive.
Above 70% for 3 of them. Kraken, 50% of the transcendence, all big important ultimates that Syndey DropBears are going to be able to use to stall the point later on down the track. And MindFreak are going to be left wanting, really, apart from Slidzor J. They haven't charged much up. Now, we do have a change up here. Reaper coming in. There has been those Reaper changes, where he does heal quite a little bit more, but I don't know that it's going to necessarily...
So I get the idea for MindFreak. What they ideally want to do is the Winston is going to be holding close, and you ideally want to burst him. The problem is the follow-up on it. So I'd say Kree or even Sombra is the better solution here if you want to all in the monkey who is holding close, or play normal goats, but just understand the concept of what you need to be doing. So if you're playing Diva, there's two different things that you can technically be doing. One is have your team basically baiting with one or two members, and then basically bait the Winston to be walking forward and zapping, but force the other team to basically be like, if you're a MindFreak, you can be like, okay, we will walk forward and we will bait the monkey to think he can walk into us and basically zap us. But you don't present him with the all 6 members, so he's not getting as much ult charge, so he's not getting as much of an advantage. And if DropBears are using cooldowns on him, he will then have to play safer in the future. So like if they were to use Bubble, Armor Pack, and he was able to walk up and zap 2 people for like 2 seconds, but then he uses Jump Out, that's when you then group up as a team, and then you boost forward with the amp speed boost while he's away, and he isn't doing that anymore. Or the other solution basically is have members like the Lucio or the Diva come up through this window and then look to put pressure on him, so they're forcing him to use cooldowns, then potentially jump away much sooner. I think the Reaper in the choke doesn't necessarily answer what they want to do. Potentially they will be able to have the monkey stand right here, get all the cooldowns, get Matrix, get Bubble, get Armor Pack, continue to zap as many members, but the Reaper on the attacking team will potentially just be, I'm going to do a bit more damage than Diva was going to do to you, but he's still going to be able to jump away. Very likely.
Bring him into the meta. You would think it would, but against the GOAT's composition, I'm not sure that it's going to work. We'll see though.
So you can see Reaper doesn't end up doing that much damage. He ends up basically hitting Zarya Bubble and then Winston Bubble a bit, and then Titawa gets the Matrix, gets the Bubble, gets the Armor Pack, has Orb on him, so he ends up not really taking that much damage. But now MindFreak are going to be in a bad position as the rest of the DropBears are going to be on the high ground. They're going to be able to spam members down here, and they can potentially all in any members as the monkey's going to land, potentially on them or on the high ground, and really still continue to zap them.
Can actually make something interesting happen here.
Davey low, Goob's going to get found out again, and the rest of the team, unfortunately for MindFreak, will follow. I was going to say earlier that I felt that on defense, Goobs did a very, very good job of at least doing what he can to keep his team going. This time around, it seems like they're almost focusing him potentially as a result of running that aggressive Winston instead of the Reinhardt.
A very clean fight win for Syndey DropBears, though it does allow 60% of the Death Blossom to be built up. So nicely done from Christoph. Even though the fight was over pretty quickly, the Reaper lasted for a while. Might get a good Death Blossom off here.
Grab comes through, the team caught in the middle, adding very low, will go down, and see ya later. Finds another 3, Slitsaw J, followed up there by a Kraken, throws out a
I don't know if there's a lot to comment on there. I think they had the right idea. You do want the fight to last a little bit longer, because Reaper's damage sure is burst, but he needs to be able to get multiple shots off into a tank, and if you're really running this quickly into him, I think the idea is somewhat correct from MindFreak, in the fact that they put a lot of pressure on Titawa, and they basically don't expect it, but they really put themselves in a bad position, and especially if you're against a Zarya, who you know has Grav and you do not have a Diva. If you are walking 4 or 5 members into a choke, as grouped as they are, you are going to get like multi-man grabbed, and it's going to be a bad day for you, especially this Winston, who then is going to be able to cleave again.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, really, for MindFreak, what we are waiting for is the Graviton Surge Death Blossom combo. We obviously don't have the self-destruct, we don't have that Diva, so this Reaper needs to manage some sort of something to open this up for MindFreak.
He needs some sort of something, that is right, Jordan. I will definitely agree with that. And Earthshat is not a bad way to start, but both of the support ultimates used immediately there by the DropBears again. Were they both needed? I would say no.
DropBears have had this happen a couple different times, especially the supports both using ults. There definitely needs to be communication between them on what ult should be used in this situation. I would say definitely using Beat, maybe as React to walk forward here, or just understanding that a Kraken's in a safe enough spot that he can pop trance whenever he feels like he's pressured or he feels like he needs to give that instant healing. So It's dependent on the situation. A Kraken's in a safe enough spot, and Bert's been usually moving around, so he's been playing on the wall, up here, over here, so. We'll go back a little bit, but we'll see here. Basically, it's very hard for MindFreak to win this fight, especially when they're spread out as they are right here. They do need to spread out and basically poke the Winston out, so he's not 6-man cleaving, and then he does need to reset right here or here. So they do need to spread out a little bit, but the problem that this offers is if DropBears do have the 3 members playing on the high ground, you do potentially have members that can get caught out, like Slidzor does right here, where he does end up getting spammed by multiple members, and it's very hard for him to live. DropBears do definitely go over aggressive here, in the fact that the bubble gets popped, Huss ends up getting dropped here, T2Watt doesn't have bubble, CCam doesn't end up holding up shield, so 3 members getting knocked down here is a really bad story for them, and Davey ends up making the correct play with the shatter. So the pin at the end wasn't that good. They did double support ult though, so next fight he has the potential to do something.
It would usually be the Lucio, I think, that would deal with the Earth Shatter, and the Transcendence is saved for the grab, which now we don't have. So maybe you could argue that that was a little bit of an incorrect play out from a Kraken. Now we've got the grab, the Death Blossom. This absolutely should be a fight for MindFreak. There is nothing that Syndey DropBears can do to defend against it.
Throws it right into the wall, catches out a couple of players. Bertlog down, but that's all they get from that one. Death Blossom used, CKM found out. That's 2 down. The rest of the team follows up. Huss goes through as well.
Yeah, so MindFreak had built up enough ults that I'd say that it was very hard for them to lose this fight. They definitely over-ult. But I'd say in that scenario, it's very winnable for them, because DropBears need to do something very aggressive. You can see Bert's playing very aggressive. He's trying to pull attention onto himself. He definitely scuffs his wall right up a bit here, and you can see how he can get... If he's playing too aggressively, he can get solo grabbed, especially because the D.Va a lot of times is playing behind this wall. So if any grab comes out on this wall or this wall, he can potentially get caught out, and he'll be sucked onto this side of the wall with no potential to get any help from his team. So Bird is definitely making a mistake playing this aggressively into a Zarya with grab, who can potentially just insta-grab the wall. You do want to play aggressively, but you do want to get the grab stuck, so you, instead of being right here on this side of the wall, you'd be on the opposite side of the wall, getting sucked into the wall, but the members on MindFreak would have to walk in and basically put more of a threat on themselves. And then Huss tried to drop behind and basically do something, but they were in a scenario where it was very hard for them to continue to win that fight. They do make the swap to Ana Zen. This is, I'd say, pretty standard at this point. If you are MindFreak and you win this point, you definitely have to rotate, especially when you see the Ana as a unit, because the surprise factor, basically the win factor you have, is Lucio and speed boosting, and if the other team's out of position, you definitely need to have multiple members sped onto that Reinhardt, onto that Zarya who are holding too close, and you can punish them. When you're spread out like this, and when you give the potential to Ana to get shots on the backline without much in return, you can win fights on DropBears' side very easily.
MindFreak is not going to cap this within the next 15 seconds, especially with Bertlog finding a pick like that.
Yes, definitely not the start they wanted there, but the question is, can they do something on this second objective, keep a bit of time in the bank, and then turn around their hopes and dreams here the second time around? Anything is possible. At least it was not a full hold of the first objective.
So DropBears will do a lot of kiting here. They'll play close, they'll do a lot of damage, they'll continue to kite back and back and back, and then they'll basically give up the high ground a lot of times. They'll either give up the high ground, or they'll look for fights in this area where they can grab the wall, they can grab very close, and they can hopefully have an Ana nade come in. But you do, as the Ana team, a lot of times on defense, want to bait the enemy team into you and then look for these grabs. So you can see Huss is basically being mindful of basically the HPs that are happening, being mindful of the members of MindFreak that are walking up. If you commit too far forward into him, he will use the grab aggressively.
Finds the picks, will go low, stays alive. Davey throws out an Earthshatter, didn't see it find anyone. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Either way, self-destruct from Shoyo finds Davey and Addy there, 2 big picks, and that should be the end of the push.
I do just want to correct you for a second there, Ben.
Yes.
The Earth Shatter from Davies, really what I think kept MindFreak alive that long. They were all caught up in Huss's grab, and if the Earth Shatter didn't come across, then obviously we would have seen a pretty quick cleanup from DropBears.
If you are MindFreak, you do want to try to fight out of the analyze site or put at least a little bit of pressure on her by forcing a fight as quickly as you can with the speed boost. They're doing a much better job of rotating together here and not letting like anyone get hit with a nade or anyone get shot by Anna, so that was an improvement made.
Like this, it's going to be an absolute blender.
Peter Watt sitting on an Earthshatter of his own, going to get charged back. I'm not 100% sure if you found out. I think a couple plays did go down.
So I'd say they definitely are forcing in an area that is very good for them. When they are forcing a fight, especially in this area with the wall, the Ana is going to be either on point, on coast, potentially on the high ground, but a lot of times in those 2 positions. And if you're forcing a fight where there is members of the DropBears in this area behind a wall, you can potentially win a fight because there will be members, even if the Rhine gets nanoed or if a member is playing super aggressively, the rest of the team will not be able to follow up. A lot of the DropBears members are either going to be playing on this high ground, playing on this high ground, or playing on the point. So if they are dropping off this high ground and you have a member playing up here behind the wall, they will get 0 help whatsoever. There will be no speed boost to save them. They have to break this plane of sight basically over here to get help from the Zen and the Ana and the Brig. So it's very important if you're MindFreak to try to get as many members here as possible and try to force a fight here. And I think they did a good job there using the Brig ult, using the Zen ult to get a fight in this area and get an equal trade from DropBears using the Rally and the Nano. Then this is the next step. If you're able to have the even fight on the high ground, and then you have members standing here and members standing here, and you're equal distance away from each other, your team will have the Lucio who can speed boost onto them. So their additional position that they have, where they have the Ana potentially making a winnable fight from the back side, will be nullified by the fact that you have your Lucio who can potentially speed multiple members onto their front line to do a lot of cleave damage.
On the other hand, does have that Graviton Surge available, throws it out. Does get eaten there by Christoph, sorry, by Shoyo, apologies. So that's a pretty big...
If that graph goes off and actually gets something, there's a chance that they win. Actually, sorry, that was Huss that got his ult eaten.
Do I throw this out? That's the question.
100% you throw it out. Like, that is a situation for MindFreak where they had about 5 seconds there where they were actually winning that fight. Syndey DropBears threw their ultimates in. Nice leap dart there, by the way, from Bertlog. But there was 5 seconds there where MindFreak were pushing Syndey DropBears back. Syndey DropBears had no ultimates. They knew that they needed to give ground.
But I would say MindFreak had a good scenario there where it was a very winnable fight. And DropBears did have to use a lot of ults basically to equalize the fight. If you're DropBears, you definitely want to continue to kite back as much as you possibly can. Don't get stuck in this choke as hard as they have been. You can hold like this, but you do not want to be in a position where MindFreak are potentially dropping on point and then you're walking into them. Oh, if you're MindFreak, you definitely want to touch the point right now. Oh man, MindFreak are making a big mistake. So the scenario looks so good for them because if DropBears overstay on this high ground here, look at the potential scenario that MindFreak can create if they stay healthy enough. You can have MindFreak members dropping and holding here as they will be faster, and then DropBears members dropping and holding here. They are going to be very close to one another, and MindFreak members don't need to use the amp speed boost to get to this position. They can simply drop off the high ground and create this positional advantage where DropBears members are going to need to continue to follow them and drop on and touch the point. And then MindFreak members will then either have control of the high ground so they can have Goobs continue to play the high ground, or he can drop and then play in this area so he can play a bit safer. but they will have tank v tank standing close to one another, but the DropBears will then be forced to use ults or forced to win the fight instantly using something like an Ananade, using something like a Trance to basically try to win the fight as fast as possible, because MindFreak will be speeding into them. So you can see Titawat is touching the point right here. He's holding shield. A lot of his team can't back him up. If there's multiple MindFreak members that were to just regular speed boost walk onto him right now, they would put a ton of pressure onto him, and they just aren't doing it right now. They're having this long fight, and Bertlog is going to get a ton of value because he's going to land a shot or two onto one of the backline. They're going to be pressured, they're going to get low, and then they're going to feel like they need to do something. It's a bit disappointing. I wish MindFreak really would have done something aggressively there, especially because you can see their ult bank. It's so filled.
Right, if they cap this one out as that overtime ticks over, Syndey DropBears, they have 3 minutes and 44 then to cap point A or cap one tick of point A. There's no chance MindFreak is going to get this with time left available to give them another opportunity to attack. So, yeah, best case scenario for MindFreak is it's a tied map, and in that case now, Syndey DropBears have already won the series. Yep, well, MindFreak at least have 6 ultimates to make this work, but it's going to be tough. As you see that grab coming through from Haas right up on top, looking to follow it up. A lot of support ultimates being used here by MindFreak as well, trying to make their way onto the point. Davey, though, will get caught out there by Haas. Self-destruct coming through from Christoph, looking to find some kills. It's it goes down. That's not a bad one.
Oh, this ends up being a mess, but DropBears I know.
MindFreak potentially can bring this through into overtime and capture the point, but it could be tough. It could be tough indeed, but they are getting those picks that they need. So Syndey DropBears, they're actually going to have...
It's disappointing from DropBears, especially because I know that they're so much better than this team, but they're playing it so sloppy where they don't need to be. This grab from Huss, in theory, looks really good in the fact that he can suck up multiple members, but the time bank isn't small enough for this to be a massive, huge value play. Sure, the ante goes off, but where's the follow-up going to be? If Titawat is walking up and trying to swing into this, he potentially can get super punished because he can get discorded and he can get bursted by multiple members here if they do not die. And you can see MindFreak had such an ult economy that they're able to dump as many ults as they want basically to survive this, to ensure that they'll win the fight. The Diva Bomb is thrown in, but I'd say they're in a position where the Rhine shield is going to be blocking majority of this point, and then they have the cover of the roof basically hiding them. So they're in a position where it's very hard for them to probably die to this Diva Bomb unless basically the Rhine isn't able to block it or there's a pin on him. But when you're 6-man grabbing, it's really hard to get a pin onto the Rhine because you can see he's basically in the middle of it. They get 0 kills with the Grav Bomb combo, and you can see MindFreak members are very healthy right now as they've been dumping support ults, so they're very healthy.
A lot of support ultimates being used here by MindFreak as well, trying to make their way on.
Sure, they're getting trades, but you can look at how many members of DropBears are now in a very disadvantageous position where they do not have the speed boost to get them out of where they're standing.
To the point, Davey, though, will get caught out there by Haas. Self-destruct coming through from Christoph, looking to find some kills. It's Titawat who goes down.
So they lose the Mac, they lose Titawat.
That's not a bad one at all. Shoyo found out also. But Kraken brings it back. MindFreak
Felix is still behind.
can bring this through.
He's fighting. Shoyo feels like he can kill Goobs right here. But if Goobs gets, I think it's a Discord and 2 headshots, he will kill him. He ends up getting onto the mini and killing Shoyo. And then Huss was out in a position, also playing super far forward. Felix hasn't been able to have the same pressure, or CK, I'm sorry, where he's been behind them the whole time, so he hasn't been able to do full cleave DPS that he's wanted to. He has had to play a little bit safer.
Indeed, but they are getting those picks that they need. So Syndey DropBears, they're actually going to have to stagger their way on here. Titawat, really the last one alive at the moment. Now the cap only just starting to get ticked up here. Kraken does still have a Transcendence, which he can use to stall just for a moment, but I'm not sure that this is going to be enough. I don't think Syndey DropBears can come back from this. Surely not.
Shoyo loses his suit before he can even get in.
Enough for MindFreak to capture the point. One can only hope for them. Haas is there. CKM going to come through. Goobs pops the Transcendence. Will this be enough? Keep MindFreak nice and healthy on point. You need to kill Swilko. Titawat just needed to swing one time to kill Swilko. You need to be finding those picks. Obviously, it's not really very easy.
Yeah, it ends up being like really sloppy from DropBears, where we see how dominant they are this entire series. They end up just playing that fight really sloppy and end up giving a chance to MindFreak to even tie this map. Sure, or they potentially even could have won. It's very, very slim that they could have won, but tying, you ideally want to get the map score where you're winning. Even though you're 2-0 up and a tie means you still win, you still want to be getting that map differential, because you do want to have the highest possible score, and you don't want to let any other team to potentially win and beat you out due to them having a better map differential. So always playing out these scenarios is very important, especially now that's a full round robin in contenders where you're playing every single team. So getting that god tier map differential is so crucial, where before you potentially only had like the second or third or fourth best team in your group as well. So you didn't feel as pressured to basically win every single map, where now it's very important that you're winning every single map, because if the second best team ends up 4-0ing every single one of them, and then they go close with you, if they beat you out on that map differential, and then if you lose a series, then you're putting yourself in a bad position where you potentially are getting a second seed and they're getting a first seed, even though you're technically the better team than them, but you're having these scenarios where you're going a little bit lesser in these map scores.
Fairly solid here on Hanamura. I got to give credit to MindFreak though, to be able to actually finish that map off. It didn't look like they were going to be able to do that, and I certainly wouldn't have.
It's a good result anyway.
Yeah, I would not have predicted that they were going to. So they've exceeded my expectation today, at least on Hanamura. But if they can turn this into a tied map, that actually could be big. You know, like we say, okay, Syndey DropBears have won the series, but end of the day, it does come down to maps as well at the end of the season. And we said it, last season, every season.
We harp on about it, and people think we're more.
Casters are reiterating exactly what I said. That's fine.
Map results being important. So we'll see how this one plays out. Can MindFreak hold out for 3 minutes and 23 seconds? It is a big ask. Yep.
So Ryan v Ryan, it's very similar. What you can do in a Ryan versus Winston comp is basically you want a very, very quick rotation. The first win condition of these rotations is basically amp speed boost and armor packing your Zen. So you're all in a very safe spot and you're basically rotating as quickly as you can. The other thing that you can do is you can basically have your Zen path either from over here and look to wrap and play as far away as possible, so that either the Ryan doesn't get a cleave or the Winston doesn't get a cleave as much if he's playing his back as far as he is, and then the other members get to walk forward. You also armor pack the Zen because he's technically the weakest member who can't control exactly where he's going to path, where the Lucio can potentially jump off this wall, be very quick. The Brig can shield bash her way through it with the choke much faster, so the Zen kind of has to hover through the entire way. So you want to armor pack him, make sure he's safe. Get through as quickly as possible. Davey almost kills himself. That's very risky of a pin. Definitely not advised.
Can MindFreak hold out for 3 minutes and 23 seconds? It is a big ask.
Yep. Definitely a very, very tough ask, but still a doable task. DropBears taking a different route this time on their attack. Trying to get up toward that high ground. It's going to be T-Watt that will drop first, but everyone will follow. T-Watt goes flying off. So right now it's a fight.
Oh, Davey is in a really bad spot. He can get punished really hard.
DropBears are winning.
Yeah, Davies, Little J both found out that this could be a very quick capture here on Objective A. Coming out from the Syndey DropBears. They lose. Swilko! Oh my goodness.
So this doubles is two different things here. So on defense, I would say this position is very bad to hold if you're Davey. I know you want to punch them. This is potentially a spot you hold if you're Winston. But you can see, as soon as he's in this spot and the rest of the DropBears have held as close as they are, they've basically dropped and created like a 6v1 fight where Davey now, even if they dump all the resources into him, and even if they're looking to fight as close as they are, look at how many DropBears members are surrounding him. He is guaranteed dead here unless they win a fight, or if they get an insane outplay from Swilko, where they get a massive boop or something. You can see basically he's getting annihilated, and he's having to hold shield, and then the DropBears members end up getting split up, which is a mistake on their end, definitely. But they're trying to stay alive as long as they possibly can. Davey is 1 HP. There ends up being a big trade here where a lot of members are taking a lot of damage, and they're all gathering up around coast. So Swoko does get a really big opportunity here to get a massive boop. And he does end up clutching.
DropBears, they lose. Swilko! Oh my goodness. You crazy man.
Yeah, Frogger, eat your heart out. Swilko is the new Lucio man in town.
Frog who?
Yeah, never heard of him.
Because the DropBears definitely outplayed them on an individual basis, though. They definitely were able to do more damage. They were able to control the fight a little bit more efficiently, as the Diva was able to sit behind them, and a Kraken was able to do a lot more damage than Goobs was, so...
I think he's like some streamer or something.
Even with the triple boop, they lost too many members earlier on that they aren't able to clutch us out.
Look at the ultimates coming up on both sides.
Davey a little bit unlucky there. Throws out at the Earthshatter. An Earthshatter that he needed to use.
If you are on defense and if you're MindFreak, I would say you definitely want to extend the point out as long as you can, and you force a fight like that, and it's so 50-50, and then if your Ryan's in that bad position, you have to invest everything into him, and you're basically banking on the fact that you will win a straight-up fight versus DropBears. And if you're the lower tier team, I think that's the worst decision you can possibly make, because you're basically saying, let's 50-50 this and see what players are going to outplay each other. And versus a team that's as stacked as DropBears, that is an awful decision. You want to try to be as intelligent as you can as a team and basically bait them as far forward to make as many ego mistakes as possible as they were making on defense. You can see how DropBears ended up basically making mistakes and trying to go for too aggressive of plays, and that's what you want to try to force, especially if you're on defense and there's only one tick to give up. You do want to try to let as much time pass and let them get over aggressive and let them go for super aggressive plays on their own and make the intelligent plays. If you're on defense, you don't want to go for these super aggressive plays where you're causing 50-50s, and you can see how they do end up coming on the bad end of that. Even though Swoko gets a triple boop and you still end up losing, that's a scenario that you definitely want to in the future not let happen, especially if like MindFreak plays Order or Blank. You just don't want to let that happen in the future.